good evening. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of January 31st, 2022. We are still in the process of reviewing individual department budgets. Tonight we have the police chief with us, then we'll be followed with the fire chief, and then director of the DPW, John Haynes. So action-packed evening, and we'll let you get started, chief.
Okay. You asked for a level service budget up front. I did prepare one. It shows 24 officers. We are actually down to 23 now. Sergeant Patterson has retired a couple of weeks ago. So that puts us in a little more of a deficit on bodies. Just to touch base, back in 1997, that's one of the sheets I gave you here. In 1997, we had 25 officers, and we roughly had 8,500 calls for service. 2022, we're down to 23 officers, and this year we had 28,170 calls for service. Up a little bit from last year. I forget the percentages. You have got 7.8% increase on calls from last year. So we have 2 in the academy that will graduate February 18th. That'll bring us 23 officers again because of Bill's departure. And then we have one slated for the academy. He has his physical fitness tests in March, and they've changed back to the Cooper standards, so roughly 20 to 25% of the candidates aren't making the academy because of the physical fitness standards. So we'll see how he does. Hopefully he passes, and that'll put us at 24. My real needs is I'd like to get up to 26 next year if I could. We have a couple good candidates in the civil service pool I'd hate to lose. And I did the increase on the budget, what it would go up a little bit, and I figured it for the worst case scenario, new candidates with a master's. And I'm not sure if they will have masters. I know one of them does. I don't know if the other choice will. And then we also included the price of 2 new cruisers into our budget this year. I broke that down, the difference between with the cruisers and without. And sitting in Capitol last year at the last meeting in Capitol, they were questioning why they are not in our, the cruisers aren't in our operating budget. So we added them in. I think we spoke briefly to Dave also.
Yeah, I mean, what happened, just some history there, back in 2005 or so, 2006, we couldn't balance the budget. And we were actually looking at reducing budgets like 2%, et cetera. So what we did is at that time, we determined, let's pull the cruisers out, see if we can get them to last a little bit longer. And depending upon what free cash gets certified in September or October, when we have our special in November or so, we'll see if we can fund them. But we asked the chief to hold off. We had like almost 3 years of that. It just never went away. It used to always be part of the operating budget, but out of a need to reduce budgets those 2 years, we pulled it out. So.
Right now, we're in the final stages of certification for our department, which is becoming nationally accredited, is the next step. With the post-reform and everything, every department needs to become accredited. But that's one person, 40 hours a week. That's what that takes. Even after you become accredited, there are so many policies and steps you have to take to maintain that you pretty much tie a guy up for his full week of work. And that's another reason that we need an additional body. Post-reform is making a lot of changes that could affect our department dramatically.
What does that do for the town, having the certification? Is that,
Post-reform wants everybody to become accredited. It allows us to get, I think that's how we're gonna be able to qualify for grants down the road.
gotcha.
So-
So it could pay off in the.
And then that, everybody is following the nationally approved standards and policies. So every department's on the same page.
Yep, makes sense.
And is that, who will that be within your department? Like a patrolman level or your deputy
It would
chief?
nice to be a sergeant. but I don't know if I can spare one right now. You have to be pretty computer savvy and know your policies well, so we're all, a sergeant, the deputy, and myself are all working it right now. But it's a lot of work, and you have to put it on the side, and then you get distracted, and now you gotta get back to where you were, so it'd be better just to have one person working on it till it's complete.
Right, makes sense.
Chief, can you speak to your administrative situation in terms of, you know, the support since Jean's retired and so forth, and how that's being handled?
Yep, Jeannie retired last year. She comes back 2 days a week. One day she's working on the PCO grant, which is the outreach team. The other day she works for the police department, does our payroll, our billing. Jeannie's a godsend. The sergeants have stepped up tracking all the grants. I have sergeants who are getting trained in payroll, so we will allow Jeannie to maybe take a vacation this summer, have a week off. So once my sergeants are up to speed with payroll and stuff, they'll be able to fill in if Jeannie's not here, but I would rather get a officer on the road than worrying about my admin side of that level, because Jeannie has it down so good that one day a week we're getting by. But again, I put a little bit more responsibility on the sergeants, but that's pretty much how every other department runs, is the sergeants take care of the grants, tracking them, and they're the ones who have to speak to the officers when the grants aren't followed correctly, so it's better to come from the guy who's tracking it.
This is, I guess, new to me. I never thought to ask this question. Why do you have to do your own payroll?
Each department always turns in their own payroll.
Oh, so it's not like the actual processing, but it's
We
like
take our payroll
Okay.
for the week, and billing, and we send it upstairs to the treasurer who
Okay.
processes everything.
Gotcha, okay, all right, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
So I see on the level services, under detectives, a significant increase. Is that adding a body under level services?
No, we moved somebody from patrol to detectives. So patrol went down, detectives went up. Cecilia Cacciatore came from
Right.
patrol and went into detectives.
All right, but it went down 13,000, and the other one went up 68,000.
It only went down 13,000 because the contract raise for the patrolman for FY '23 raised it up.
Okay, all right. Have you been losing to other departments?
I've lost one, Officer Randall, to environmental, and I haven't lost to any other departments.
Really? That's pretty good.
I have a couple people who are looking to lateral to our department, so that makes us feel good. So if I'm able to increase, I might be taking a lateral, which would save me on academy and be able to put that party right on the road right away.
Is this a new contract they're under?
The sergeants are gonna be negotiating right now for July 1st, so I don't have what their numbers are gonna be. That's why I put that in there. Patrolmen have till the following July. They have one more year left on their contract. They're off by 1 year. We separated them.
And Chief, just for the benefit of viewers and stuff, can you just go over your comparables? 'Cause I think it's a pretty eye-opening set of statistics that you have there.
Well, service calls, like I had said earlier, went up 7.83% this year. Public records is skyrocketing. That went up to 1,400 this year, and that doesn't include, which we took out of tracking, that doesn't include requests from attorneys, other police departments, DCF. Those aren't get tracked anymore because they're not really a public record. That's a law enforcement side, so I don't have to track those. The records we track here are just from people requesting accidents, companies requesting accidents. Law firms are now requesting weeks' worth of accidents every week. We'll have 3 or 4 law firms that'll ask for a copy of all our accident reports from the last couple of weeks. That takes time. We have to get them all out and get them to them. We have to take out what they can't have and it's, public records are becoming a
So
big
those,
job.
those are the ambulance chases.
Correct.
Attorneys don't do that.
Jesus.
Don't be picking on attorneys.
The stats for manpower, that speaks for itself. It seems like every time we get ahead, you guys allow us to hire a couple leave. It's just, and in 4 or 5 years, there's gonna be probably 5 to 6 retires.
I mean, I think the general sense that I get, clearly is within your population group, you are the leader of the pack in the wrong statistics.
Correct.
Yeah, but why is that? Why is East Bridgewater that crazier than Whitman, for instance? I mean, 28,000 versus 9,000.
I verified all these
300%.
numbers with the chiefs prior to making this slide.
Right, but I can't believe that the towns are that radically different. There's 3 times as many problems in East Bridgewater than Whitman?
Talking with the district attorneys at court, we're the second busiest compared to Brockton.
What brings that? What's the
The
big deal? What's
officers
the big-
are proactive. They're out there.
Yeah.
Our arrests went up over 400 this year. Our accidents went up over 400 this year. Our motor vehicle stops went up to,
40%, that's a big jump. Like,
Right.
what, are people all of a sudden driving, a gumball rally?
I mean, your answer's as good as mine. I don't want to stereotype anybody, but it's gotten busier. I mean, we are a cut-through community in a way. We have major roads running through.
Yep.
That applies to it.
Are you still, weren't you partnering with someone on some of the mental health calls?
Yes, with the PCO, mental health, there's 7 departments, and the mental health group actually got another grant, so there's gonna be 2 mental health clinicians instead of just 1. So one will spend her time in the 3 busiest departments, and the other one will be in the other 4 departments. So that'll be a huge help, but yes, it's still the collaboration with that. The PCO is still the collaboration, the SEMLAC is still there. I have 7 guys on SEMLAC, which is great, so if I ever need help, I pick up the phone, and like for the Chili Chowder Festival, I wanted the motorcycles there, so SEMLAC sends me the motorcycles, and it doesn't cost us. State Police send their guys, so it's a nice, working group.
Yeah, that is good. And I think last year, if I remember from the presentation, didn't the number of calls that were related to domestic, or categorized as domestic, they were up dramatically? Has that trend continued?
I have it broken down here. I believe it's up a little bit, not too much.
That was wellness checks last year, wasn't it? Wellness
Wellness
checks?
is way up, but
Yeah, I
the
mean, we gotta-
domestics were up.
Isn't that what, like, alarm companies, security companies do? It seems like we're providing free service when,
So a wellness check will be if somebody calls, can you check on my father? He's not answering his phone.
I know,
So
but
we'll go to the
that's
house.
like 6,700, 6,800 times. Like, that's a lot of,
Oh, that's business and house checks.
Huh?
Those are business and house checks. Yeah, and
Right, that's what I mean. Like,
we check all the closed businesses every day.
I know, but isn't, like, in other towns, don't they say, oh, go hire a security company to go check your business?
That I know of.
Sure they do, come on.
I mean, some businesses have their own security.
Yeah, so tell
But-
them.
I mean,
It's a
These
free
big-
service that you're giving, and
Well, but I think it's something that the officers can do in between.
they do.
Right, that's what I'm saying, yeah, they,
If they're not answering calls, they'll go and do neighborhood checks, business checks. I know we started driving through the over 55 communities last year during COVID, and we're getting calls weekly of those people thanking us.
Yeah.
I mean, because they see a presence there and they feel a little more secure.
what are they afraid of? I don't know, it just seems like that's a big number, the business house checks, and then there's a big number on here compared to the others. I mean, if Whitman did
We break
$6,800.
well, I can't answer how Whitman tracks their calls.
True, yeah. I understand.
I only know that we try to do it as professionally as we can.
No, you guys are definitely doing a professional job, no question there, just questioning the volume and how we can make do with less,
Like this data here this is a company, DataViz, they take it right from our dispatch.
Yeah,
So it comes right off our dispatch. And like I said, people go away on vacation, those are house checks, that's what, they'll ask if we can check their house, and we do, and we log it in. And, I mean, they're the taxpayer in town, we're here to help them.
right. Well, that's good.
We're gonna touch on the dispatcher budget.
Yep.
yeah, I was gonna ask how central
I
dispatch
know
was
that.
going.
Well, they are unionizing. So they will probably be meeting with, they're coming under mass cops now, and they will probably be meeting with Clifford and Kenny, and they will probably be coming up with a new agreement. This was the agreement that we had set. The rates didn't change. But I'm not sure what's gonna happen once they get a contract. That just took place probably last month. The selectmen recognized it, I believe, last week at the selectmen's meeting.
So how does this compare what we have here to last year?
The same.
Same?
Chief, you touched on a little bit, but maybe you could just expand on the idea of kind of going forward with the department. The concern I had from talking with you, one of the concerns I had from talking with you was the idea that the department needs to be prepared for transition when some of its senior people, 5 years, 4 or 5 years, 6 years down the road, are gone, and we don't have adequate.
Between the sergeants and deputy chief and myself, within 5 years, 50% of us will be gone. Myself, the deputy, probably half the sergeants. So we have to bring in new personnel. I'd like to get, someday down the road, get a lieutenant position, so he could, everything could move up the chain. I don't want to leave the department when everything's not in place. When Scotty Allen left, we had stuff in place to just keep moving forward, and that's how, it's never gonna stop, so we have to be prepared for that. And there's probably gonna be some major retirements with, probably in 5 or 6 years.
I mean, one of the other things that, when Kevin and I met with the fire chief the other day, and we were talking about looking forward and a lot of the development that's happening in town, that development doesn't come without a cost on the resources of the town from a public safety perspective, so.
Public safety, schools, everything. And that's a, what, 281 unit going in up on the 18 on the Whitman line. Yeah, everything that, the greater the population, the more traffic, everything's gonna go up, just,
Right.
you know, I like to see the town growing, it's great.
Growing pains.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I want it to be nice and safe, I live here, so, you know, when I see that our calls going up, it kinda bums me out, but I can't answer for other towns' calls, all I can answer for is ours, you know? But everything has been verified. I know I looked at, and I talked to Kevin about it, the percentage of budgets that police departments get in the other towns, we're the lowest. So, I mean,
But I said you're high where you don't want to be and low where you don't want to be. So,
you guys are, again, our department is a very proactive department. The detective unit, they're involved in, one's on a federal task force, one's on a state task force, and that will reap benefits for the town.
Yeah.
When I needed some other help for detectives in here on a case, I had FBI agents and state troopers in here, and it doesn't cost the town, so it really definitely pays off.
Good. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
But the level service put us at 24, and when these guys get out, only gonna be at 23.
Right.
It's gotta go the other way.
You know, I'm trying to get over the hump, and every time we make a step forward, we take one back, somebody will leave, or, you know, unfortunately, Bill decided to move on and retire early, and that hurt. You know, he had some good skills, and we're gonna miss Bill. So I would really like to get up to that 26 person if it's possible.
When was the last time we had 26? That was like in the early 2000s, wasn't it?
That was in 1997, 98.
Yeah, and the town was like 7,000 to 8,000 people. Yep. I was on the finance committee then. I've come so far.
those were the days.
And with post and everything, the responsibilities are just getting more.
Yeah, definitely getting more, not less. So if we follow the needs budget, then that would put a dent in it.
Yeah, a huge dip.
Well, even
Again, to put those additional 2 on, you're talking, it's gonna take me almost, if I can get a lateral, I can do that almost immediately. But the other one's gonna take about a year to get into an academy, and it's too late to get into the April, academy, so it'll be whatever one's next, Randolph or Plymouth. I try to keep them close here. But they've been running every 6 months, which isn't too bad, but it's 6 months long. So,
So there's 1 year lag.
The reduction in professional services and the computers is,
yeah,
did you go
because
to?
we updated our computers this fiscal year. They just came in Monday.
Okay.
We ordered them last July. So they just came in Monday, and so everything will be up at Windows 10, so I was able to cut that out.
Okay, thank you.
And even just, I mean, going back to what you said earlier, the number of public records requests that are coming in, I mean, that's gotta be,
It's just
again, like a
time-consuming.
full-time job for somebody.
We have a sergeant who oversees it, and I have the dispatchers doing a lot of extra work. They'll prepare the records, and the sergeant will review it and send them out. So it's not like the dispatch, I mean, we're dispatching fire and police, so if one of them doesn't have a call going on, they'll help us out with the public records or some other little projects that I can give them. So they have been a big help.
Do we charge for that?
No.
We should.
You're not allowed to,
Really?
yes. Unless it's a very
Public.
burdensome project, like you have to spend a month on it, you can't charge. You can't even charge for copies of the paper or anything.
You're not, that doesn't apply, you guys don't apply into the records, state records requirements then, huh? Is the police different?
No, we follow Mass General Law for public records,
You do,
yes.
so,
So most of our
Charge.
records, we won't, yeah, we'll, very rarely do we send a paper copy out, it's all email.
yeah.
So
Okay,
we'll-
so you can send them the majority of it.
And that's the
Okay,
preferred method, then I have a
electronically.
record, if they say, hey, we didn't get that in 10 days, sure you did, I sent
Yeah,
it to you right
okay,
here.
all right,
So, I would prefer email, because then I have a record of actually when it went out, when it came
exactly,
in and everything.
okay.
So that's how we do 95% of our records.
So you just really don't have the need for copies and you don't, how about the time? Can you charge on your time?
No.
Really?
Yeah, if you read the law, I can't, because I'm not spending enough time on each individual
Right,
record.
right,
You know,
So,
if a
okay.
group came in and wanted everything we've done in the last
Exactly.
20 years,
Yeah,
then
then you
maybe I
would.
could charge. But
yeah,
somebody's coming in for an action report, that's one person, so that's 10 minutes, I can't charge for that.
right, gotcha, okay.
But, yeah, they all do add up to a lot of time, but it's
Darn
all
right they do.
individual records.
Yeah,
And discovery, you can't charge for, that's part of court. If another department's asking for records, that's just law enforcement to law enforcement. DCF will ask for records on different residences a lot of times, and there's no, you can't charge for that, because they're considered law enforcement.
okay.
Any other questions for the chief?
No, only one drug offense, that's good. You guys are doing something right. Big problem in other communities, right? There's people smoking.
Well, yeah, that's probably broken down through a little different thing, like the web cases are search warrants for drugs.
Oh, okay, so some of that goes into some of the other activities,
That's how
yeah.
this pulls it out.
Still, the one is, that's awesome. You guys are doing a good job there. Even if it's a little
Drugs are
more,
our
it's still
pet
low.
peeve. We don't like drugs. Overdoses, a little increase on the drug overdoses throughout Plymouth County. We've stayed about the same here in our town,
Yeah,
but unfortunately Plymouth County's rising a little bit. It's just becoming so accessible and stronger. We jumped up to 8 milligram Narcan now. We started at 1.5, went to 4.2, and now we're at 8 milligram, and it still takes them a couple hits to bring them back.
wow. That's crazy,
Yeah, unfortunate. It's tough. It's a very strong drug.
yeah.
It's crazy. Everyone good?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, chief. Doing a
Good
great
night.
job,
You
thank you.
too.
Gave Tim some extra time.
Oh. He was getting less, wasn't he? We told him that.
I didn't want to get him whining on a phone call tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's right, I have it.
Thank you.
Making use of it.
We're gonna do some technology.
There you go.
Oh, boy.
You can thank my deputy for this, he's the one who brought it up. Right?
Now, notice, a shining example just passed before you, 25 minutes, and he was,
So I get 24?
Setting the pace.
You know how to use this thing, right?
I was taught. 9 hours ago.
So it's fresh. It's fresh in there.
Oh, it's still on me, how convenient.
learns quickly.
What's that?
I said you learn quickly.
Where is it? I can't see that far. I'll begin, here we go. All right. So before you, on the handouts, is the budget, the left columns are the FY '22 actual. The only thing I forgot to put in there was a $22,000 was added to additional comp other at the special town meeting due to contractual changes. I forgot to add that in, but I'll show you in this presentation. The left column is and the yellow column. So this year, I'm asking for additional staffing. I'll get into it with the presentation, but the blue column is the level service budget that the town requested. So without further ado, so current conditions of the fire department, we have 23 career firefighters and 4 call firefighters. We operate with 4 groups of 5 firefighters, 1 officer, and 4 firefighters working 24-hour shifts. The shifts are 24 hours on, 2 days off, 24 on, 4 days off. This repeats on an 8-day rotating cycle. The fire chief and deputy fire chief both work weekdays, day shifts. I'm supposed to have an administrative lieutenant. Yeah, here it is. Administrative lieutenant working day shifts also. However, he was had to be reassigned to a group due to staffing shortages, due to multiple long-term on-the-job injuries. And he is also the department's EMS coordinator, and now he's covering both roles while working on a shift. And when he was on as administrative lieutenant, his main goals were EMS and fire prevention inspections and whatever, and business inspections throughout the year rather than trying to do them all in October, November. We tried to spread it throughout the year so we can do a better job of actually inspecting these businesses. So our current staffing is 2 ambulances at the EMT paramedic level. Fire staffing is 1 engine with 3 firefighters, the tower with 1 member to a reported structure fire. If members are committed to an ambulance call, fire staff is reduced by at least 2, which means the tower wouldn't go. And the engine hopefully would have 3 members unless it's a night shift when it might be short-staffed and it'll be only 2 firefighters going. The station is unmanned at times of high call volume or concurrent calls, which honestly just occurred just now. We had 3 in a row and had to recall off-duty people. And I'm fully staffed right now. Dispatch is covered by the combined dispatch with the EBPD, and I believe I told you people, over the past 2 years that we were going to dump out, we were going to utilize all our people and go dark like most fire departments around the world do. It's, you look at the city of Brockton, if Station 2 goes out, station's empty, there's no one there. And it's just the way fire departments kind of operate. Each EMS transport commits a minimum of 2 members for approximately 1.25 hours. If both ambulance are out, we attempt to keep 2 members available, frequently utilize and recall of off-duty members, like we just did about 10 minutes ago. Some night shifts, including this one at 10:30, will be reduced to 4 members to save on overtime costs for sick or OJI coverage. This shift that's working tonight, I have a member out on OJI who will be out for at least another month for I believe it was a knee injury. So a little bit of history. The last time manpower was added to the 4 groups was 15 years ago in 2007. We went from 4 firefighter EMTs per shift to 5 firefighter EMTs per shift. The town has grown significantly in that 15-year period, as we all know, and you just heard from the police chief, as have our citizens' needs and expectations. And as expected, our call volume has also increased substantially. So calls for service in 2007, our total calls were 1,935. Last year, it was 2,643, a 37% increase. EMS calls went from 1,391 to 2010, 44% increase, and ambulance transports went from 1,042 to 1,599, a 53% increase. Ambulance revenue in fiscal year 2011, I couldn't get accurate numbers for 2007, was $595,000. As of January 22nd, actually, of 2022, we have brought in $588,494 in ambulance revenue. We're on track to bring in just over $1 million in revenue for the ambulance, which is an 81% increase from 2011. This is very hard to see what it is, but this is our ambulance transports. Back in 2011, there was 1,684 calls to the scene of a medical, and 1,231 were transported. 2021, we had 2,116 calls to a scene, where 1,599 were transported. So adding 4 firefighters would allow us to address the increasing number of calls for service, reduce employee fatigue or burnout, which is occurring at a greater rate due to the ongoing pandemic that we're under now. It provides for a safer and more efficient staffing of fire apparatus responding to structure fires, and it provides some resiliency in the event of long-term illness or injury and other unanticipated vacancies. So right now, I can't drop below 4 and staff 2 ambulances, and I refuse to take an ambulance off the road for 2 reasons. Number one, first and foremost, because we have one here. The citizens expect it when they dial 911 for an ambulance that we're going to respond with them. If both are out, then we have to call mutual aid. And the flip side is that it also makes money for the town as well. This is pretty much what you're looking right in front of you on the spreadsheet. The level service budget is $2,049,000 in salaries, whereas the 4 members are $2,227,000 in salaries. Additional comp level service, because we have to fill man for man, is $653,332. Adding 4 members, I can actually cut overtime, and it'll be $558,928. Expenses, $126,668 for the level service, and then they go up to $141,668. That's mainly because to hire 4, I have to outfit them with gear, which is about $4,000 a piece. So we're looking at $16,000 just to outfit them with personal protective equipment.
Is that an annual increase every year?
No, so
Cost?
so what would happen is, if we got the 4 members, the 141 would be decreased by the 16,000 the next fiscal year, because I don't have to buy that gear. I usually do it through a town meeting article, or I get it through a grant. But I figured it'd just be easier just to add it to the budget now, and if I get them, I get them. If I don't, I don't. Total ambulance operation 114, 287 across the board, nothing changed with that, no matter what. No matter how many people I have working it, that's what it costs to run an ambulance service.
So that doesn't include the personnel?
The ambulance?
Yeah,
Nope, that's just
just the fuel and
repair and
oil and
maintenance,
stuff?
billing services, supplies, software, ambulance and software licenses, and supplies for the ambulance, which went up dramatically this year. Last year I budgeted 22,000, and we've already spent 21,500 in December. So now we had to go back and we can kind of put in the CARES Act to hope to get some money back. So next year I budgeted 35,000. As Dave would probably know, you're in the hospital business.
Yeah.
Hospitals are in the same business the town's in, they're trying to save money. So they used to replace equipment like on a one-for-one basis, and that doesn't happen all the time anymore. It's kind of rare, actually, that they will supply us with supplies, and, we're billing for them. We're billing for them too, so.
I know you're making money off it, so why
So-
should I supply it?
The overall increase in the level service budget is 83,000 over last year. With 4 extra members, it would be 181,845, which includes the 98,621.35 to hire the 4 firefighters. Now, those 4 firefighters actually cost 240,000. They're about $60,000 a year, just to walk through the door. So for 240,000, we can get away with doing it for 98,000. And we can hold that off till we're done, I guess, right? So, all right. There. This budget I gave you is two-sided. There's a whole list of explanations on the back. The handouts I gave you, there's one that says like incidents by time of day to show how I'd be able to drop down to 5 at night, rather than doing it during the day, because the day we're just too busy between the hours of like 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. And the other handout is just our ambulance responses and transports for 2011 and 2021.
Okay, and this is also predicated on an assumption on the upcoming contractual increases and where it would land.
So this budget has a 2% increase already built in for the firefighters union, and they will not have a contract July 1st. I added 2% because that's what the other town departments had got, so I figured it's probably won't be less than 2%. Maybe it will, don't really know. We haven't even started negotiations with the firefighters union yet. They just actually installed their bargaining committee, I believe, last week at a meeting.
And then, Chief, it talks about the increase derived from removing weekly stipends from additional comp others.
Yeah, so my salary is a 2-part salary. I get the regular salary, and then I have another $23,000 in stipends that get paid weekly for emergency management. Director of Emergency Management, Right to Know Law Coordinator, Forest Warden, Community Response, there's like 5 different things. I am also gonna be in contract negotiations this year, as well as my contract expires June 30th. That number that's listed at, salaries is a placeholder, so to say. Not saying it's gonna be that, but guarantee it won't be over that. But with any luck, it won't be too far under it either. Which budget would you like me to go through?
Did that answer? So you're moving some of the stipends to
So,
the salary.
so some of the stipends were moved from additional comp other, for me, up to salaries. If through negotiations that doesn't happen, they'd have to be removed back into additional comp other. But the number for additional comp other went up anyways, because the firefighters got, in their last memorandum of agreement, $22,000 worth of stipends, $1,000 per firefighter. So the number actually didn't go down, because 22,000 was added to it.
22 added to it this year over last year?
22,000 was added at the November special town meeting for stipends.
Oh, okay, November 12th.
So
Oh,
that's
what
the
you
one that-
forgot to add to this. is
That's
that
what I
you said?
forgot to
Okay,
add to
all
this.
right,
So the 115 and just callback, last year was actually, it was supposed to be 90. But we added 25,000 because they get more money for coming in and callback, whether it's during the day or night. Well, they get paid for more hours, I should say, minimum. Excuse me.
How often do the call firefighters get used?
Not too often.
Why is that?
Well, they used to be able to be used to cover shifts, but the union and bargained that, that can't happen anymore.
So the union's running the department now?
Town agreed to it.
Okay, who's that, the selectmen agree to it?
Selectmen, town council. Honestly, I only have one that's trained to firefighter 1-2 right now anyways, so it's really not that big of a burden because I couldn't have any of the other three working anyways. I
Right, but no
couldn't get
one,
them into an academy because
no
of
one seems
COVID.
to put any development into that.
So the problem is, years ago, when we were running 3 people per shift, that's when I got on, 3 people per shift, the call department was used all the time. And then throughout the years, as we gained more career, they were utilized less and less. And I originally was going to disband them if I got the 4 extra people. But, so I applied for SAFER grant this year as well, Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. I did it last year as well. Obviously, we didn't get it. So I did that again. This budget was supposed to take effect July 1st for the 4 additional people, but it was actually pushed off to November 1st, October 1st instead, to find out whether or not I'm going to get that grant. So if I get the grant, the federal government will be paying the $300-something thousand a year for the next 3 years at 100%. And this money that was added, if this committee agrees to this and the money's added, that money won't be used. It'll be turned back at the end of the fiscal year if we get the grant.
So what about the call firefighters? What does that have to do with them?
So there's 2 NFPA standards, NFPA 1710 and NFPA 1720. If I'm a full career department, I have to meet NFPA 1710, which requires 15 firefighters on the fire ground within 9 minutes. Can't do that. NFPA 1720, 10 firefighters on the fire ground within 10 minutes. That I can do utilizing the people I would have and a automatic mutual aid entity company from out of town. That'll bring me to that standard. So we'll meet that standard.
Right, call
Expand the
firefighters.
call firefighters, I now become a fully career department, no longer a combination department, and I'm held to a higher,
Yeah, but what do we need that for? It's been working fine for 30 years, hasn't it? Now you're gonna get rid of the call firefighters and pay
No,
these
he's
guys a
not,
bunch of money.
he's not gonna get rid of them.
I'm not getting rid of them. I'm
But you
keeping
said you
them.
don't use them.
I don't use them.
So what's the point of having them?
Well, honestly, it's a really good resource to use to see if these people would be willing or able to become career down the road. That's exactly how I get hired. That's how the deputy chief got hired.
But isn't that pool actually very small now?
It is.
Because the whole concept of call firefighters, where you live in the community, the bell rang, and you came.
Right.
Now a lot of people work outside of the community, and it's difficult to make that. And it used to be really a career path, like for you folks.
I agree with you. It's not like it used to be.
What is, chief?
Back when his dad was fire chief, you know, they put a box on and call people in, and the Carver Cotton Gym would close down. Back when I got on, a lot of the firefighters worked for like the water department or the highway department, and they're still getting paid by the town. They're just going to switch helmets, so
Right.
to say. That doesn't happen anymore.
Why
And
not?
it's one of those things. What's that?
Why not?
I don't know.
I mean, you're in charge,
honestly
right?
I don't know.
Okay,
I really don't know.
maybe we should bring it back.
It's very difficult to actually find good qualified people to do this job today.
Well, there's so many variables now with chemicals, et cetera, and all and the training you need and require now is a lot different than it was years ago.
I agree.
Yeah, probably like electric cars, probably.
To
big.
become a paramedic, it's gonna set you back $8,000 to $10,000 for a career that you may or may not have. If you wanna be on the fire department, well, if you wanna be on East Bridgewater Fire Department, you gotta be a paramedic. So if you didn't come in the door with your paramedic, I wasn't hiring you. Because now it's gonna take you a minimum of 2 years to get there. And I'm gonna send you to an academy, and then if you don't become your medic, I have to show you the door. And then some other town will be able to pick you up as a firefighter 1, 2 certified, academy-trained firefighter, and I paid for it. It's happened. So now it's like, no, you gotta be in medic school, almost done, before I consider you. And so I just hired 2 basics. Well, they're in the hiring process now for 2 openings that I will have, one in February 5th and one in April 1st. And they're both in medic school, almost done. So that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
One of them came from my call department.
That's good.
Also an Air Force veteran, too. Air Force Reserves, so that's good. But it's just different, and it's not East Bridgewater, it's everywhere. And I don't know what the solution is. I venture to say someday down the road, it probably won't be a town fire department, it'll probably be county-based. Won't be in my short career here, I only got 3 to 6 years to go.
Been talking about that since 1997, so.
But you know what? Eventually, it'll probably happen. But regardless,
Oh, thanks, I didn't know.
no,
all that
it's,
stuff, so it's
it's,
good. It's a good learning for me.
it's just a different ballgame. A lot has changed. I come on in 1991 and just, I had to buy ballistic armor a few years ago.
For what?
Active shooters.
People shoot you when you go to fires?
They do in New York,
I know, but we're not in New York, we're East Bridgewater.
so it can't happen here.
I'm just asking you, has it happened here?
No,
Okay, then
But it-
that's my point.
but it can.
Yeah, I mean.
All right, let's get back to the
Chief,
budget.
Chief, can you speak a little
Not a
bit,
plane crash either, but it could still happen.
can you speak a little bit to your experience with firefighter retention? Number one, and then number two, what you would see as sort of the additional benefits of having a larger department in terms of that dynamic?
Yeah, so firefighter retention, right now, I have, we've had a few people leave to go to other departments that pay more, have way more members. I'll throw the town of Bridgewater in there. They pay more than East Bridgewater. They double our size and population and probably tax base and everything else, and they have a really good contract. And they also have 12 people working on a shift. So my people, they come in and they're assigned to an ambulance or an engine, or a forest fire, or a ladder truck or whatever. And they bounce around between different roles on a regular basis. Having been able to add manpower would bring some stability to that, where, they would be assigned to an ambulance today. And maybe the next shift you work and you're assigned to a fire truck or the engine or whatever, and then the following shift you're on the second ambulance. And it'd be more rotation, where right now, when I drop to 4 at night, now they're staffing 2 ambulances, they're staffing an engine, or they're staffing a ladder. And honestly, with the pandemic, they're just getting burnt out. It's happening everywhere. It's happening anywhere but first responders, nursing, whatever. People are being burned out through COVID. And hopefully, once this pandemic resolves, we'll be able to take a step back and kind of breathe a little bit. But I think some of the initiatives that were put in place by the Department of Public Health probably won't change for us. We're requiring PPE on calls. I see some things that will stay with us forever. When I first started, you wore a pair of gloves, that was it. And now we're wearing gloves, masks, gowns, face, eye protection, everything else, on pretty much every call you go on because of this pandemic. And my people are being run ragged right now. And, they're not really complaining about it either. They're doing their jobs, but last year, I had a record high 86 mandatory shifts. I had to order in 86 people throughout the year to cover shifts because they didn't want to work, for whatever reason. I say it's burnout. It could also be younger generation doesn't have that,
Get up and go.
what's the word I'm looking for, deputy? The same drive I did, I guess. When I took this job, I'm a firefighter 24/7. When you need me at 3 PM, I'm here. You need me at 3 AM, I'm here. Younger generation, it's a little different. This is more of a job than a career, I suppose. And I don't really know if there's any way to fix that.
Is there any kind of like job fair we can do with the high school, even with like
So,
police department?
Glad you
That's
mentioned,
gonna
glad you
be,
mentioned that. So I've been,
Good idea.
that wasn't even
Superintendent
planned,
Legault.
guys.
You've
Superintendent
given them a
Legault,
big lead in.
Superintendent Legault and I have already been in talks about having a public safety academy. And we want to start it next year. And she's gonna apply for some grants to do that. And so, in a real short story about it, what will happen is they're gonna try and find a few people that wanna do it next year. I think, junior year they'll start. And what will happen is they will, for a couple of hours a day, come over to the fire station, work with us as a class, that, you know, they'll be able to get credit for. Excuse me. And hopefully, we'll get people who were, you know, born and raised in town, educated through town, that, you know, maybe they don't want to go to college, they don't want to do that, they just want to work with their hands, because even the trades today, it's tough to get people to do trades.
Yeah, I was gonna say
At
Patrick
least
Franey, that was a
I
conversation
can,
we had too.
I can
so.
get them into the fire station and say, look, this is what we do. You know, I can start your first year with salary and potential overtime, it's like $85,000, not bad for 19, 20 years old. She has a company that is gonna provide EMT training. They can't test till they're 18, but they can at least have the course, and when they turn 18, they can apply for the test, so now they'd be EMT certified. So they'd be able to come, you know, right in as well. Another reason why I didn't want to get rid of the call department. I think the only other town around that does it right now is Middleborough, and I don't know if they still do it, but they were doing it 2 years ago. I don't know if the pandemic kind of squashed that a little bit, but, yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to kind of start small, and then, she told me there's a town in Rhode Island that they built a new high school. And they actually built a bay in the high school to house the fire truck. Like a live, like, working fire truck. People are assigned to that station, so to say, every day. And the kids come down for their classes at that station and act as firefighters. And if they have to go out on a call, then the truck leaves or whatever. But it's kind of getting people involved, like, you know, this is what we do. So I don't think a lot of people know what we do.
Right.
So we're a catch-all for everything. If there's no other person you know to call in town when you have a problem, you call the fire department. And we go, and we solve your problem. One way or the other, we solve your problem. We're a catch-all. And it's great. That's one thing I actually always liked about it. Whenever you need something and no one else knows how to solve it, we will, one way or the other. So yeah, we are working to try to do something like that, to get people in town, because I would rather have town residents apply. And I don't get that often. I get people from all over the area, but I don't get a lot of East Bridgewater residents that apply. I mean, I do get some every once in a while, but not, I would hope there'd be more.
I think, well, I hope to see with the combination of people who have so much student debt after college and are frustrated that now people going through high school can see that there are other opportunities. You don't necessarily have to go to college. I feel like when I was in high school, it was pushed on me. Always go to college was probably it, but when I got out, I was like, business.
Me
Yeah.
personally, I mean, I wasn't a big school person. I wasn't my thing. But seeing things burning or melted, it's pretty cool, and, you know.
You never know who you'll
Once in a
attract.
while, you know, getting to save a life or deliver a couple of babies, I mean, that's good. I've delivered 2 babies. It's the greatest cause I've ever been on. And, I mean, that's cool. How many people can sit there and say, you know, I delivered that baby?
Yeah, it's pretty
And
awesome.
delivered that baby to the hospital and had the doctor come out and shake my hand saying, that baby's temperature is 98.4 degrees. And said, that's remarkable. It's like, what an awesome feeling.
Yeah.
But I don't, those things like that, the people, the kids, the younger generation, I'm not the younger generation anymore. I'm 51 years old.
Right.
I have an 11-year-old. I can't figure them out sometimes. And it's like, that's what we're trying to do. How do we get this generation to buy into this? And think, you know, geez, you know, I never thought about the fire department. That's a pretty good gig. This
Not on
town's been very
YouTube.
good to me over the past 30 years. I have no complaints. And, you know, I'm gonna finish my career here, and I'm gonna walk away with my head held high and be happy.
Well, it helps the
And-
community, too. You guys do a lot of stuff in the community.
Right, I
Which
mean,
is
and-
great.
If this pandemic would ever end, we'd be able to do more. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's an awesome career. quite honestly, it's the best job in the world. And when I put a, you know, a job posting out there and I get 3 applicants, what is that? You know, it's, there used to
Everybody's
be,
working, yeah.
there used to be 50 or 100 or something like that, and it's, and, you know, we're not a civil service department, so I don't have a civil service list, and honestly, thank God we don't, because the fire departments that are civil service, once that new list comes out and they hire everyone off of it, you're left with
Get the-
everyone nobody wanted to hire.
Right, right.
So that's what a lot of the towns around us they're at right now. Like, I know a town north of us, he's actually waiting, he's got an opening, he's waiting for the new list to come out because the other one's been exhausted.
Right.
So I don't wanna run into that problem, like, oh, I gotta go through, I just don't wanna do it.
Want to get your guy, not
Right.
something else.
Right, I have more freedom, I guess, to choose who works for the East
Yeah,
Bridgewater
and
Fire
you should
Department.
have that, too.
So, yes, we are, I'm glad you brought that up. We are actively working on trying to get kids to look to this type of career. You know, the same with the police. That they're gonna, I believe Liz was talking, we're gonna start with fire, but I know she's supposed to talk with Chief O'Brien and, you know, see about doing something with that, but
We're gonna have to have the same conversation with the DPW too.
Listen up.
Market's tough out there for
it's
everything.
trades too. I mean, you can't find, you know, people aren't becoming electricians, plumbers, you know, builders. They can't, right, they're just not doing it. I don't know what they're doing, but they're not doing this stuff.
Well, I talked to Patrick a few years ago when I was his liaison, and he was even saying that kids don't even, like, you don't have to go to school to be what he's doing here in the town hall either. So there's all these different paths that are local that would
Right,
be
I mean,
nice.
I'm not saying, hey, throw away your education and come work for me. You know,
Well, no, but
but if you don't want to come,
Right.
you don't want to go to a 4-year school or whatever, and you just want to get into the workforce like I did, we're here, you know, and,
It's busy every day.
right, I mean,
cameras.
we just, I walked in this meeting at what, 6:15-ish, and I've already had to call people in today, because we had 3 calls in a row. And I'm fully staffed tonight. So, I know I've said it, you know, in meetings past, that eventually we're gonna have to add manpower. And unfortunately, we're there now.
You know?
Kevin had asked me last year, when he was sitting over there, and said, what are your thoughts on like hiring more people and cutting the overtime? I said, well, if I hire more people, I'm gonna wanna fill them man for man. And then I really took that to heart, and I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? I could probably hire more and keep 6 during the day when I need them, and drop to 5 at night when I just can't afford to keep them, or afford the overtime to fill them. When obviously, by the sheet that I gave you, it shows that we are quieter at night. But right now, we're dropping to 4 at night, so at 3 in the morning, if the ambulance is out, and your house catches fire, there's only 2 people showing up. And by OSHA standards, they can't even go into your house, unless it's to rescue you, or the fire is so small that it's in its incipient stage that they can go in and make a quick knockdown. But if your house is well involved, they have to wait until 2 more people show up, one of which is usually me, or a mutual aid engine company that's coming in automatic before they're allowed to go into that house by OSHA rules. And it's an NFPA standard to it. It's called the 2 in and 2 out rule, and it's been around forever, but we didn't really have to follow it before. But now that we're in OSHA state, we do. So this hopefully would alleviate some of that as well.
So you had a page up here earlier, and I think it'd be good for us to get that on what the overall funding would be and what would be cut, et cetera, the overtime. It would be good if we could actually get that.
Oh, I can show you right here in this, on the handout that you got. It shows you, so I'll explain how I did it. So I took my highest paid, my top 4 firefighters.
Yep.
And what I did is I said, okay, I'm not filling any of your vacation leave. I'm not filling your holiday leave. I'm not filling your personal leave. And I'm not filling your sick leave. And I added all those numbers up and said, I don't have to fill any of those shifts. I can cut, and that's the cut for the overtime. I didn't really want to go more, because if something happens and I get jammed up, the last thing I want to do is come back and say, sorry, I budgeted incorrectly, I'm short $50,000. So I'm trying to be responsible about it too, but also not come back and, you know, our real needs budget for 6 people on a shift is way more than, I can't read the numbers, $3,041,000.
Well, it says your
It'd be
additional,
about 3.3 million.
yeah, your additional comp last year was 620. So
Yes.
how many, can you get four
So it's
four
six.
firefighters for that and make that go away?
620 plus 22, so it's actually 642.
So is the idea you could take that money and get six?
Well, no, because
Full-timers?
a lot of this stuff, like half this column is contractual stuff that's required. So let's just go down that list.
A couple of them, like
So
longevity.
cover
pay, that doesn't go
vacation,
in.
I mean, I would still need something in that because there might still be multiple people off the ship, so I would still have to fill some of it. Cover sick, I budgeted 30,900 last year, I'm at 45,000 right now. But a lot of that I was able.
COVID.
Well, with the CARES Act, I was able to get reimbursed for it.
No.
But once that expired January 1st,
Yep.
now I
No
can't.
good.
Additional comp holiday pay, some of that is time off. Some of that is they have 13 holidays. They get paid for 7 of them, and they're allowed to take off 6. So 7 of those at 10 hours a day, they have to get paid for. Cover school, that is 2 things. I believe last year we added that line item because I'm unable to train people. Like the police are allowed, they go to in-service every year, 40 hours. We don't do that in the fire service. We do, every 2 years, do EMT recertification. But we don't do anything fire-wise. So we added that line item last year. So now at least we're able to go out on Robbins Farm with the boat or the hovercraft and do water drills or whatever. And we had a burn prop show up last year. We had a maze. It's hard to do it when they're on duty because
They're working.
more often than not, they're on duty. They get inside the maze, the bell goes off.
Right.
They got to strip down the gear, jump the M's, go to the
Oh,
car,
right, yeah.
and
Can't do
it's just a nightmare.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
So we added some money for that. This year, we're not really using that though, because I have to use that to offset the sick overage I'm gonna have because of the COVID. Personal days, they're allowed personal days. Callback. Callback, you take like the storm we just had. So I had to bring in, I had 6 people working on duty. It's the one 6-man group that I have right now, because the administrative lieutenant is on that group for now. Was working for the storm, so I brought in 6 more career firefighters, and I offered it to the call department, and one guy came in. So that comes out of callback. Anytime they held over past their shift, callback.
Callback.
The recall tonight for the 3 runs in a row, callback. And that's one of those numbers I really can't gauge too much. I mean, I got a pretty good feeling about what it's gonna be, and I think we'll be okay. Cover OJI, you'll notice, like, in FY '22 I budgeted 4,000. This year with 4 people, I'm budgeting none, because if they get hurt, they're out. They're not being filled.
Right.
And that's day or night, it is what it is. Additional comp other is stipends. So they get compensated stipends for either an EMT or EMT paramedic or whatever, or there's a couple of, like EMS coordinator,
Doesn't change.
maintenance coordinator, certain things that
Yeah,
it's an automatic, they gotta get it.
doesn't change.
Same thing with longevity pay. Have to pay it, it's contractual obligation. Sick leave buyback, they can only accrue 150 days per year, and they have to sell back down to 135 before they get their extra 15 days. So contractual obligation.
Right.
Vacation buyback, I never budget vacation buyback, because more often than not, they don't sell back the vacation, they do for the break. But I do have, 1 or 2 guys last year that sold back, but for me, no big deal,
Yeah,
because if you're selling it back, I'm saving time and a half.
Right,
I'm
on
only,
the other side.
I'm paying you time, not the half time as well.
no, that makes sense. So that column doesn't go away with the new firefighters, but it goes lower.
So Chief, just for, at a higher level, to look at the 4 additional firefighters over this current operating budget, it's $199,000, of which you've cut the additional compensation $86,000. So it's about $114,000 difference to have 4 firefighters from a salary perspective.
98,621. Oh, you're looking at the top, I'm looking at the very bottom line, there's a green line, the very bottom. It's 98,621, it would be over the level service by, obviously we adding their salaries, which There's no way to make that up, it is what it is. But I'm cutting
Yeah, so
overtime,
that's coming under, because you're taking
cutting
into
overtime, and I cut expenses,
account some expenses. You
some
cut
expenses.
$5,800, six,
You have a slide that shows that.
I do, where is
The
it?
differences in the three options down near the end.
I read that as 10-year challenge, by the way.
So the line that says level plus, kind of in the middle there, so to add 4 members, it's a level funded budget plus 98,621.
How do I make that bigger?
oh, that's because in the other column, you didn't have the 22 grand in here, that's right, okay.
Great.
Okay, great.
Seems like a no-brainer.
Well, the one thing I wish, let me see if I can find something real quick, because I want to talk about potentially how can we go about
Okay, because you got 12 minutes.
funding
before
this? So,
He's already over 13.
I told you 40 wasn't gonna be enough. All right, so. Ambulance receipts. So right now, we're sitting on $982,000, 419, 900, I can't even see that. 982, 419 in ambulance receipts. So we know we need $125,000 to pay payment number 2 for the tower truck, which is finally here, thank God. At least 715 to offset for the general fund like we do every year. So what I'm kind of getting at is there might be more money in there available to help make this kind of go through. Because when I project that we're gonna have, make $1 million, $1,078,000, I think, this year. I mean, that's what the fund was for. And I was supposed to get a new ambulance this year, but we lost $330,000 in revenue from ambulance billing over the last 2 years because of COVID. I didn't make the numbers. The federal government gave me those numbers through the CARES Act thing that I had to fill out, so we lost $330,000. I went before the Board of Selectmen this afternoon at 4, and they allowed me to use $325,000 ARPA funds to buy an ambulance. Luckily, I have one that's available at Specialty Vehicles, which is my vendor, right now. We'll have it in March. So that freed up $300,000 right there that I don't have to worry about next year. And I'm sure, we took a really bad hit when this virus started. Our call volume tanked in 2020. I don't know what happened to all those people who were having all the medical problems, but they didn't call us. Well, the call volume is now going right back up. I think next year, this current year, calendar year, will be a record year for us. And being that means it'll be a record year for ambulance revenue as well. And I didn't even increase rates last year. I usually do it every July, and I didn't. So we will be this July, only 3%, but still. Going back to 2011, we were making $585,000 revenue, and I've already surpassed that in 6 months. We're good, There's funding opportunity here, hopefully, to help see this through fruition, so.
Okay,
Let's get it.
lot to consider when the numbers get firmed up.
No, I
Let's see what's happening.
totally get it. What do I want to do here? I think I want to do that. What's that?
So just log out as a user?
Oh, sorry. I think I just shut it down. Did you need it?
Maybe.
Sorry, John, I apologize, John.
Save you 4 or 5 minutes of my presentation.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll turn it on when I leave for you, but
You're not gonna run it for him?
all right, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. You're doing a great job. You guys
Thank you.
really are.
Except with those call firefighters, I don't know.
Well, it sounds like that's a bygone day.
It's sad though, because that's how a lot of us came up, you know?
Yeah, I always thought it was a good program.
It was. On a side note, we only had one storm leader call this storm.
That's good.
Not really. Cost a couple thousand all the time.
Whoever would have thought the fire chief would be such a budget hawk?
It's on camera.
That's that one, chief?
All right, next up, we have the DPW.
I don't know why you didn't
Is
sit.
that in a bad spot?
Yeah, that's a penalty. They did, Crystal. Suckered me over here, so.
Spend a couple years on this committee, you learn a thing or two.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Hello.
You guys did a great job moving the snow around on the weekend. Thank you for that.
No, thank you. It was a challenging storm, but it was, a lot of things fell in line, to be honest. First off, I gotta give props and kudos to our crew, as well as all the contractors that came in and stuck it out with us. It was 30 hours of continuous operation, and everyone worked right through it, but there were a number of things that fell in line. The weather conditions obviously worked in our favor. 30 inches, as we're recording it, is a lot of snow.
Oh, that's how much I was
It's like a
wondering.
record, right?
It's, in my 30-plus years of snow and ice removal, that is the most snow
Most?
that I've ever dealt with in approximately about 14 hours it fell.
Yeah.
Because at 5 AM, we had about 1.5 inches on the ground, and by 5 PM, we had about 30 inches on the ground. So, again, can't give my staff, my supervisors, all of our operators, our drivers, and all the contracted assistance that we get. And many of these contractors have been with us for decades.
Yep.
It's a pleasure to work with a group of men
Good crew.
and individuals like that, so, thank you. Everything looks different on this screen. So again, we'll, had an opportunity to already meet with Liaison David. We've worked together in the past, so we're pretty familiar. We met and went over the particulars of the budget, you know, almost line by line. Had an opportunity to discuss things, so I'm sure he can give you some insight and assist if there's anything particular that I miss. Again, you know, we like to joke and, you know, but if DPW doesn't move, nobody moves. This weekend was absolutely an example of that. What we have is a general overview of our operational budgets. We, under DPW, the umbrella of DPW, are responsible for 7 different divisions. With me here, then short notice, Operations Manager Rob Ken.
Evening.
Brian Kiley, our Facilities Manager.
Brian?
So what you'll see is, this is just sort of a general recap. It gives you an overview. I think it sort of speaks to our entire, and then we break it down into individual divisions, all of you that have been present for these discussions before and presentations. Overall, DPW budget is anticipated or is proposed to go up 2.5%. Individually, we're looking at, when we break it down into individual divisions, we try to identify the top 5 divisions are general budget. They're funded through our general tax revenue, and the bottom 2 are what we refer to as off-budget. They're actually enterprise accounts that are utilized and funded by the users of the programs, and those costs are offset. I'm gonna skip this, okay, Ryan? Highway and land management, 1.9% increase. Snow removal, thanks to the, working with you, with the finance committee last year, and recognizing that, you know, on average, we had underfunded snow and ice operations for decades. It was sort of ridiculous to, think that we could fund our snow and ice operations for $50,000. So I appreciate your efforts last year to fund that budget appropriately. We were doing very well. Until Saturday.
I think we blew that apart.
Yeah. As with everyone, you'll see as we go farther into it, we are facing the same issues within Public Works that all of us are facing at home. The costs of raw materials and parts are just increasing exorbitantly. And in order to cover those costs, you'll see there's some increases. Some of these increases are relatively small, but they look like large percentages when we actually break them down because of the size of the overall individual budget. Facilities maintenance, again, facing increased utility costs, increased material costs, things like that. We'll delve into that a little bit farther. And municipal sewer program is a very exciting area. Selectman Spagone and myself have been here, I know, in front of the Finance Committee before to talk about the opportunities that are upcoming. Last year, we made some steps towards moving to a point where we could bring some of that services in-house, utilizing some existing staff, which I think will be an excellent opportunity as the town's municipal sewer program increases. We'll be able to have staff that has grown with that, and I think in the long run, it's gonna be very beneficial.
How much more capacity is there?
Currently, at the existing wastewater treatment plant, we have about 25% capacity, 20% capacity left with the latest connection of Carriage Crossing. So Carriage Crossing, who are in the process literally of connecting to the system as of Friday until they had to stop due to the weather, are in the process. One thing that I want to point out about that is we have now covered the cost of the connections has been covered. The cost of construction of that section of sewer main has now been covered by the actual connection fees that we've received. So that's everything now moving forward is a net positive for that downtown district. To that point, though, we actually have another 30,000 gallons of capacity available in the plant with the addition of another treatment plant. So all it would take would be a new treatment skid, so we could increase that. Actually, the potential's there for 60,000 gallons a day of flow. With Carriage Crossing coming on board, we'll be utilizing about 22,000 gallons of our 30,000. We obviously need to keep some capacity as a reserve. That's a requirement of DEP, so the most we can allocate is 25,000 gallons of flow. Those are max flows. Those are not even our average daily flows. But as we bring these additional connections on, it actually increases the efficiency of the system too. One of the real issues we've had with the system to this point is the very ebb and flow of the actual flow in and out of the plant. You know, when the school's off for long durations of time, that's not good for your operation of your treatment facility. So bringing on a connection like Carriage Crossing, Dewhurst Lumber connected, Subway's connected earlier this year. CVS has been connected for several years now. This all helps level out the operations of the plant as well, so. You'll see a relatively significant increase in the solid waste expense line side of things. That's the result of the extension of the contract, the professional services, the curbside collection contract through, that contract goes through till the end of, we have 2 years, a year and a half left. It expires in June of 2023. At that point, we'll go back out to bid to look at costs. I don't anticipate that we will see costs subside, and that, as I've said, year after year after year, it's expensive to dispose of solid waste, whether it be as an individual or as it be a community. One of the things that we did see in our most recent negotiations was a shift, a positive shift, in my opinion, towards the overall cost of recycling. The cost of recycling has dropped significantly. 2 years ago here, even last year, I was here talking about how recycling was really impacting our program. And it was actually, at that point, it was more costing the town more to process the recycling than it was to throw material in the trash. Thankfully now, although the cost to increase to dispose of trash has increased, the cost per ton to process recycling is down into around $25 a ton. That's down from $114 a ton last year.
Wow, that's a big difference.
It's a huge decrease.
And just keep in mind, we used to get proceeds back from the recycled material.
Certainly, it's a positive for our program. It's a positive for the environment. You know, as much as the materials we can get out of the waste stream. It's nice actually, because for 25 years, you tried to educate everyone to recycle, and then suddenly when the recycling market was upside down, you didn't want to see people recycling because the costs were just extraordinary. And then the other off budget is the water division. When we break the water division down into our operations budget, which is essentially what the cost is, to run our system data, day after day on an annual basis. The systems upgrade budget, which is the major portion of that, is the water meter replacement program we undertook about 5 years ago now, to replace all 4,400 water meters in town. That's a project that is supposed to be done on about every decade. To this point, it had never been done, and we are within about 200 meters of completing that. So we've been able to do that in-house. When we were originally looked at doing that, we had talked about perhaps utilizing it as a capital project and putting it out and having a contracted service. That was going to be in the area of $1.5 million to do that. So we've been able to do it in-house. At the end of this, it'll be at a cost of about $800,000. So pretty substantial savings by the fact that we were able to use our own in-house services. It took a little bit longer. A significant, we'd be done. We would have been done this time last year or even earlier had we not been impacted by COVID. Obviously, we had to stop that program. We have to go into the homes in order to change the water meters. We didn't want to put our employees at that risk, nor did, understandably, residents want people coming in and out of their house. So it got delayed, but we are very close to the finish line, which will do a number of things for our department. We anticipate, again, a positive offset for our anticipated revenue. We do not have our costs, because of where we have to submit the budget this year. We won't know what we actually come in at for revenue until the end of the fiscal year. So for FY22, we won't have that number until the end, but you'll see in FY21, we anticipated almost $2,316,000 in water revenue. We actually collected $2,800,000 almost 30,000, and so we've been for the last few years on a net positive, which again helps because that all allows us to continue to maintain and develop our water system for the long-term benefit of the residents and the community. So it helps with a number of things. So. In our highway and ground staff, we maintain 90 miles of roadway, 25 miles of sidewalk. That's comprised of 5 individuals that do that on a regular basis: sweeping, line painting, roadside mowing, and maintain our drainage system. The MS4, which I've talked about before, continues to be a much more involved component of our overall public works operations, in complying with our environmental protection MS4 permit. That same group of individuals maintains all of our public grounds, as well as the individuals that you see out there in the snowstorms, the windstorms, that's this. What I like to remind people is the same people that come in when it starts are the same guys that are there when they go home. The duration of the event is, they're there till it's safe for everyone, and all the roads are passable and everyone can go home again, so. Again, we've talked about this in the past, but one of the benefits of having a well-equipped and experienced staff is the ability to assist with capital projects. So it stretches our capital dollars farther. So when we do allocate public dollars through capital projects, it allows us to, having in-house staff, defer some of those costs. We can do some of the demolition, we can do some of the prep, we can do some of those things. Utilizing our in-house staff, which saves. One of the things that we used to talk about a lot was the fact that, well, we can get contracted labor, and contracted labor, there's some savings to that. Those days are gone with the utilizing prevailing wage. Most prevailing wage rates are well over $50 per hour per laborer. Equipment operators are now in the $70 to $80 an hour range. So those costs have just become exorbitant as we try to manage them, as well as the fact that, speaking to what all of us I think have talked about, there's a general labor shortage. So it's no longer is it one of these things where you can line up contractors to do the work in lieu of, or even to subsidize your own staff, because they're struggling with the same issues. So I'll point out essentially the areas of each division that, that we've seen what we refer to as significant dollar increases. So again, in the repair and maintenance of roads, looking at requesting a $7,500 increase, that's 12.5% over last year, up from $60,000. That's really just to cover the increases costs we've seen in aggregate materials. That's what road maintenance is for us. That's for us to purchase pipe, stone, gravel, asphalt, the things, that line item sort of covers the things that we're capable to purchase as supplies for projects we do in-house. Another area is the care of public grounds. This is the line item that really covers the supply and maintenance costs of the materials we use to maintain our athletic fields, our town green, all of our public spaces. We've seen significant increases in the cost of fertilizers, seed, all of those things. So we're proposing a $10,000 increase in that line item as well.
Has there been further discussion, John, on user fees for the, for the high school field? And I know we talked about that, I don't know if it's last year.
There's been a little bit of discussion. Actually, the Recreation Commission is moving aggressively. It's nice to see them moving forward with some initiatives, looking at some different opportunities and actually trying to bring in some of the youth groups and such to talk to them and identify. But on our side, we haven't increased those costs to anyone, and so those fees go directly to the school department. They retain those. So what we do is we ask them for some help sometimes when we, purchase materials and things like that. If they have a revolving fund for their rentals. So on occasion, and Brian can speak to that a bit, we keep trying to, we want them to recognize that some of that money should be retained in there for future usage. One of the large areas, and it won't be, I'm not talking out of school, no pun intended, the synthetic turf on the field. The lifespan of the synthetic turf, just the surface, is about 10 to 12 years. Well, turf now is about 10 to 12 years. it's actually in excellent condition. I'll give Brian a lot of credit for that, for the maintenance that's gone into that, and the foresight to spend a little bit of money, you know, maintaining it. But it's nearing, you know, within 3 to 4 years, it'll be near the end of its life. And it's not just an aesthetics issue at that point, it's a safety issue. And just to replace the surface is over $1 million. So it's we've been talking about this for a while, it's something that we should be considering as we rent these spaces out and use them, which we want them to use. I want to see that field used all the time. My kids play on that field, you know, sometimes 7 days a week, depending on the season. Feels like I'm there more than I'm home sometimes. But we should be considering that, you know, we need to start thinking about offsetting some of those long-term maintenance. And that's really considered maintenance when you replace the synthetic turf. It's surprising, but that's only to replace the fiber turf on the top. It doesn't reconstruct the field or anything like that underneath, so. Again, I think you've all had an opportunity to kind of, to look this over. This hasn't changed since I submitted it. But happy to answer any questions you might have.
With signage, like highway signs and things like that, the metal, have you considered, or are there any options to use like a plastic or something similar that's maybe more durable?
So the issue we have there is that's regulated under this thing called the MUTCD, which is the Municipal Traffic Control Devices, and it has to be a specific reflective grade material, which is trademarked by 3M. And it has to adhere to these aluminum posts and aluminum signage. So there may be some opportunity to do that with some signs, but for the actual regulatory signs that go out, and the street signs, those are all to maintain compliance. That's why years ago we had to go to the bigger signs with the bigger lettering and things like that. That wasn't because everybody just thought they looked nice. That was because it's required per the MUTCD, which have a lot of their backing from insurance companies. So when you don't have the proper signage in place and this and that, it's one of the favorite things that attorneys like to look at when there's an accident. So there's.
Get off the attorney.
Hit hard.
I am, that's true.
I think you're taking a lot of it personally.
Again, this is snow and ice budget. There's zero increase, again, thanks to the foresighting of this, your committee last year to fund that at an adequate level. I will say that was based on the previous 4 years' snow and ice average. Last year, we were purchasing salt at $48.70 a ton. This year, it's $66 a ton. So those are kind of, when we talk about inflation and escalations, those are the things we're seeing. The primary driver for that, not that salt is any more expensive, but shipping it. That salt all comes in on shipping containers. We've heard stories of, you know, they were able to book a cargo, a tanker essentially, for, you know, $3,000 a couple of years ago. It's $13,000 now, $15,000.
$24,000.
$24,000, yeah. So, and they purchase this material, you know, more than a year out. They line up these container ships. So, again, one of the things I really want to bring the committee's attention to is fleet maintenance. It's a huge area of benefit to the town that we have 2 ASC certified mechanics that work for the town of East Bridgewater right now. And they not only maintain over 100 pieces of DPW equipment, they maintain all the police cruises, fire trucks, with the exception of the actual integral pumping systems that they use for fire prevention. Council on Aging, they assist with the school department, those 2 mechanics, and they keep our fleet running during winter weather events and such. We need to start having some foresight and some planning, because both of those mechanics that are willing to slide under a loaded salt truck at 2 o'clock in the morning as it drips snow and ice have told us they're gonna retire within the next few years. I think it goes to a much bigger issue that I'm sure you were discussing earlier. The trades, you just can't find that level of skill. These guys are capable of, you know, rebuilding a small engine, but also welding a plow back together, all within the same, that may be within an hour. They're a very talented individual, and it's a very unique individual that is interested in doing that work. I think you can all see it yourself. Think about where you take your vehicles for repair. Most of those shops are 1 or 2 person shops, unless you go to a dealership, you know, and those people are nearing the end of their careers. They're talking about, you know, retiring and getting out of the business. So I do think we need to have some foresight and start to think about some transitional planning for that. So I've proposed a level service, but I've also proposed a real needs budget, which would be the hiring of an additional full-time mechanic in the garage, serving 2 purposes. There's an absolute need. We could keep another mechanic busy all the time, but we also need to have some foresight and think about training someone to understand what it is that goes on a regular basis throughout the day. And having that person in place, obviously, as the mechanics are all in their late 50s. So, you know, they need to take more time off to go to doctor's appointments and things like that. And it's just the nature of the beast. We're all going there. But they intend, and they're best friends, these 2 mechanics, and they plan on retiring together. So
we need 2 more best friends to
we
come
need
in.
2 more best
All right.
friends at least, yes.
But can you go to like Southeast Regional and get a couple of kids and start them out?
That is something we've actually talked about on a number of different boards and commissions throughout the state. And yes, the problem is Herb Chambers does the same thing. And he can make it a lot more appealing to come work at a Herb Chambers dealership.
Inside a heated garage,
Brand new.
$65 an hour with all the tools.
Exactly. I mean, the programs that they're offering right now, same with the programs for truck drivers. These nationwide companies are literally recruiting these kids off the floor of school. They're there waiting for them when they graduate. So it's a very, very unique individual that wants to come to work for a town. The days, and it's gonna sound ridiculous, the days of everybody wants to work in public, you know, it's easy to fill public works positions. It's not any longer. It's dollars and cents, it's the work, it's the conditions, the situations. The employee's just not there anymore. It used
Can't
to.
be on the internet all the time?
Well, that's the thing. You can't do these jobs from your phone.
Exactly.
You know, it's hands and, you know, feet, long hours, and, you know, working out in the fields and baseball fields and things like that, so.
So we've heard tonight from a number of departments, and we hear it from every place, that the workforce, it's difficult now to get folks. And through the course of the past few years, I've had a few seminars I've gone to that have talked about, here's the work habits, here's the baby boomers, here's the Gen X's, here's the Gen this, in their approach to work and how things work. And it's clear, you know, John and I were talking earlier, and, you know, he had a young lady who was working for him, trained her, got certified on all sorts of stuff, and then went to work for, was it National
Elevator
Grid?
union.
What is it?
The elevator union,
Oh, yeah, the elevator union.
That's a tough one to compete with.
$80 an hour.
So, and the same thing, we're faced with the mechanics like he just talked about, and we, you know, the fire department was in here earlier, and the police department was in here earlier. And I don't know if we as a board should be sitting and talking with the administration, the Board of Selectmen and Jim about, we've got to start thinking about some succession plan and with the workforce the way that it is out there, because they're right, that the benefits that we used to have as municipal employees, it's just not the same mindset that, you know, I'm going to work for this much and I'm going to have my pension at the end. A lot of these folks are too busy with this than to be thinking about their pension and let me work remote and make this much money, et cetera. So we are getting into a very difficult situation. So I'm concerned from a financial perspective from the town, where do we go with this? We're not talking years and years away either. We're talking within the next 3 to 7 years, we're gonna have some major issues, I think. So I think we should start talking about it and start planning for it now than later, so.
Yeah, I read a thing that the biggest baby boom year is this year when the most will turn 65. So it'll go down after that, but then that's, you know, they're all like, your guys are gonna.
And what's happening is the need is becoming more and more. What we've seen is that people are less and less able to take care of things themselves.
Yeah.
So they rely more and more on public services. They're relying on things more and more requests. One of the things that we did, now 3 or 4 years ago, we actually have a work order system, a formal work order system, and we track every work order that comes in. And we knew we were busy. You know, we knew we got a lot of requests to do things. But on average, we get between 3,000 and 3,500 work order requests per year. You know, that's 10 a day. Requests for service, on top of our regular maintenance. These are residents that, you know, a lot of them are, you know, they're justifiable things, but they're things you typically, you know, residents would have kind of dealt with the overgrown limb on this, overgrown brush on the side of the yard, or, you know, they would have, you know, managed, you know, how do I get rid of this, or how do I get rid of that? That expectation continues to increase, that, you know, the municipality provides these services. They came, or they've moved from cities and things like that where those sort of services were provided, you know. Well, I used to just sweep all my leaves to the edge of the road and the town would come by and pick them all up.
I heard someone talking about branches, like putting them at the end of the road.
Right. You know, those weren't services that the town like East Bridgewater ever even had to consider. Everybody raked up their own leaves and they put them in their backyard.
Yeah.
Now it's becoming like a legitimate expectation of residents that, no, we paid, you know, this service was provided where I lived before. We
You
aren't
need,
there
like,
yet,
on your
but-
website, just say, like, we're not gonna pick up those leaves, so.
It's not on the list, and that's not
And
happening.
people are, don't know, they don't know how to deal with those issues. They don't understand, the number of people that don't understand where their water comes from, that don't understand, you know, heating systems. So they call, you know, their heating system's failing, but they're calling us. And we respond because they call it as a water issue in the house. Well, no, this is actually an issue in your house. It's an
Warner
internal
Brothers.
issue. Right, you know, your fuel's gone out. This has nothing to do with the water. The water meter's over here. This is the oil in your tank. But,
You'd be amazed at how many people call us when the power goes out. You know, we're getting our power back on?
As soon as we turn that switch back on, yep.
You pay your bill?
I usually just go to Facebook and see what people estimate, so.
but to David's point, and again, we had a lengthy conversation about this, and it sounds like you've had it with others. The one situation, this mechanic situation keeps me awake at night, for a number of reasons. The reason that we have a successful event and we're able to maintain and keep our roads open and stuff was because when those trucks were coming in and the wiper motors were broken and the exhaust had fallen off, and those two mechanics had those trucks back out in half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. Well, what do you do if you don't have that resource in your garage 24 hours through the duration of the event to replace a windshield wiper motor? That's not something that just anybody can do. So you just go park that truck, and now that truck isn't on its route anymore.
I used to be able to do it on my 67 Mercury, but I can't do it now.
Well, now because you have to have this, you gotta have a computer that you connect to the harness that before it even lets you access the
Now you
the
can't even
code.
find the wiper motor.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing.
Which is another point, you know, I think, John, we went through this budget with a fine tooth comb really to understand everything, and, the cost of these parts and materials, especially on the fleet maintenance, it's astronomical just due to the shipping cost and the overall manufacturing cost. John, you wanna touch on that, like the pair of tires, et cetera, a few notes like that, so. that when it gets
Tires for
to you?
police cruisers. First of all, you can't get them, so, you know, but they've increased about 30% in cost. So a set of tires now for a police cruiser, they're higher performance tires than you or I would get for, you know, our regular SUVs. But they've gone from, you know, you could get a set for about $1,000 to now we're at about $1,700. You know, and these cruisers are going through multiple sets of tires a year. And I forget how many cruisers Paul actually has out on the street, but, you know, I think his fleet has 10 or 12 cruisers. So now, you know, obviously, Capital's assisting with that, with the vehicle rotation plan and the more so, but the tires are something, these cars are on the road 24/7. They're 40,000 miles, so they're getting about 9 to 10 months out of a set of tires in some occasions, the frontline service vehicles. Front end, like our loader tires, you could spend $10,000 on a set of tires for a front end loader. I mean, the numbers are just, people's eyes just kind of glaze over when we start to talk about these costs. And then you have to try to actually, at this point, find them. It's a real challenge because shipping delays and inventory and people just don't, you know, they can't afford to keep these things on their shelves. If nobody's gonna, you know, how long are you gonna keep a Ford front-end loader tires in your shop waiting for somebody to come buy them?
So, John, all in all, on your budgets that you're responsible for, what was the overall increase, 2.5% for?
Correct. Yeah,
So,
overall.
and that's at a level services. But thinking about what we had talked about with an additional mechanic to start this whole program, to start to get somebody, what does that change that number to? Any idea?
I went to sleep here, I guess.
No pressure.
Clickety-click-click.
I can do that. It's actually relatively, we can, if somebody bears with me while we do the math here.
That's fine.
So what are we, the difference here would be,
A new mechanic is like, what, 100 grand?
no, it goes from 134 to 195. Yeah, I don't know why it's not waking up.
But when we add people, doesn't it, like, the insurance and all that stuff comes out, another part of the
Well, you
budget?
figure in a factor for benefits.
So we'd be
20%?
looking, from our standpoint, you know, our budget would increase $60,000 for that, and then we're proposing, later on, looking at the addition of another facilities, maintenance technician.
That was-
So you're looking at about approximately $120,000 increase to the overall budget if we were to try to look at a real needs budget, which I have, I just
And the
can't
facilities component is very similar to the mechanics component, right?
entirely.
Then we have a person who goes and does a lot of these repairs and maintenance. And the reason this is, I can talk about this, is because I went through this at a facility I worked at, that the money we spent outsourcing, when you could get people, far outweighed having somebody in-house who knew how to do this stuff. So, you know, we gotta take some of those economics. This is part of what we need to start talking about as a whole, as a group.
Well, we see like, it was recent years, we've seen a lot of turnover in department head areas too, so it's almost like maybe just an overall
Yeah.
idea that
wave, the baby
all
boom.
these opportunities are here
Yeah.
for careers. Good job there, but fun.
Somebody posted some jobs on Facebook. Did you see the East Bridgewater town open positions, the treasurer job and something else?
Yeah.
I was seeing if there was anything good myself.
Yeah. A little bored at home?
So who has to make that decision? That's the selectman, if you can hire the two new guys?
No, it's it's
We can
town
recommend
meeting.
it.
Yeah.
What makes the final decision, they make the final approval of, but it's again, working with the finance committee, looking at what's available for funding at the end of the year, working with the board of selectmen, they would make the approval, then I, as DPW director, actually have the authority to move forward with
So
that
John,
hiring.
an example, like, we talked with the fire chief about call-ins, et cetera, and what do you still, with the mechanics, have to outsource stuff that you can't do because you don't have the capacity versus the knowledge or the skill set?
So honestly, there is very little that we need to outsource. Very little.
It's usually, the outsource is usually because of the time we take to make the repair.
Yep.
Somebody else can do it just as fast as we can, but we have other stuff to do.
Yeah, you overload.
Yeah, so pass it off to that guy, that's all he does it well as we would do it, and that frees up the two to take care of other stuff.
Right, to Rob's point, they can be much more efficient, they can do, a dozen other things rather than be stuck on one thing
right.
for a couple, like we have a situation, our aerial lift. Obviously, that's something we need to be very conscientious of who works on that. But for the first time, and it's a 20-year-old piece of equipment, we have to send that out. We have to send it, and it has to go to New Hampshire. It's not something anyone around here can do. To have the cables that actually suspend the boom in the air worked on. That's something that we thought probably makes sense that we send that to.
Yeah, I wouldn't get up in it.
Yeah. But honestly, there is very, very little that our mechanics can't tackle, can't do. Obviously, they do warranty work, that warranty work, any of the, well, that goes back to the manufacturer for particularly police cruisers and things like that.
Recall, things like that.
Yeah.
Just for an example, my truck 2 months ago needed service. It needed a set of tires, which we had to wait months to get. But then it needed a ball joint, shocks, and a sway bar. And the mechanics did all of that. And then I needed a front end alignment, but we don't have a front end alignment machine because we don't have the space for it. So that was farmed out. But they did everything else.
It's good.
Yeah, no, there's nothing they can't do if we can give them the means to do it. But to Rob's point, there are other things where we look at and say, they could do a dozen other things rather than this one thing, and we will send that out.
Well, that was more than a week's worth of pay right there.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they,
That work.
no exaggeration, they save the town. I mean, what's shop rate? Shop rate right now, if you sent a vehicle out, is over $100 an hour. So they save the town, I don't think it's an exaggeration, they 5 or 10 times their regular salary overall. It's money well spent.
Can I ask you a question that's, do we have a composting site here? Like, do we have a spot where we can drop off compost items?
Yeah, the recycling center.
It is there at the recycling
Just
center?
leave it on the side of the road, they'll come pick it up.
Right.
That's what I heard on Facebook. If I just put it at the end of my driveway, someone will take it.
No,
I don't know who that is.
Is there a list of like what's accepted and stuff for the compost items? Yeah.
it's it, yeah.
It's on the website.
It's all on the website? All right.
General yard waste,
Yeah.
I don't know what else.
Small brush. I mean, anything, typically like anything less than 4 inches in diameter, we'll accept as brush,
Okay.
and take that. Manure, farms bring material in, grass clippings, anything organic that's composted, we'll take. That's an area that we just haven't had enough time to really delve into. There's opportunity there as well.
We turn it over and screen it and give it back to residents who want it, so
Okay, that's cool.
it's good.
It's good.
The facilities maintenance is another area, and I'll let Brian speak to that, but I don't think people understand the sheer square footage of what the town's responsible for and the variation of the maintenance we do on, or responsible for on all the buildings, from the most advanced systems to the most antiquated systems.
You guys pull a lot of weight in the town, that's for sure.
So again, with this, we've submitted a real needs budget that shows a request for some large increases, but those large increases are in areas where I think we're all seeing increases. Utilities, electricity, heating. We break this into two. So there's the facilities that are covered under the municipal side of the government, the municipal buildings, and then there's the facilities that are the school buildings, and we do that for really more for accounting purposes, for their Chapter 70 reimbursement. Brian, you'll see a pretty significant increase in the elevator repair line item. So it went up 30%, which really is only $4,000. It's a small number.
Right.
So but when it goes up $4,000, but Brian wants to speak to the situation with the elevators.
Aged equipment, it's
This
all
one
old.
here?
This one here is almost 30 years old.
This is the haunted one, right?
Yes, it is. This one in the library as well, it's from 1978. They're old. The regulations are changing, and we're gonna have to upgrade them or replace them, one or the other.
VPN thing.
And the maintenance costs are going
I'm
up,
trying to get to the Shan drive.
like everything else. It's just
Nothing goes down.
nothing. And we do have some old buildings. I mean, the other side of the town hall is 1850.
They're historic. They're not old.
They're old. Library is old. Central School. We do have some newer buildings, but they all have their issues.
And again, you'll see with that where we are trying to look ahead in that, where we've submitted a level service budget, which is a 7% increase. We're also submitting a real needs budget, which has an additional maintenance technician in it. As you addressed, David, a lot of the work that we now have to sub out because sometimes you just need another pair of hands or whatnot, or you need a second pair of skilled hands that have, it's really, there's one maintenance technician. The other thing is there's one maintenance technician, so when that maintenance technician is on vacation, there's no one to do that work.
We're always seem to be backed up.
And I don't think, none of us are gonna say, well, if we hire one more maintenance, we're gonna catch up, because there will always be, job security, and that things break, and things need to be repaired, and things need preventative maintenance.
In a perfect world, it would be great to have, a licensed electrician and licensed plumber on staff, but it's just not feasible within our numbers.
Right.
A master plumber, $90,000 a year.
Right.
So,
Into the same thing, there are situations when it makes more sense to subcontract that work out, so that your maintenance techs can do 7 or 8 other things, and get those 7 or 8 other things off the list, while your contracted plumbers work on one major issue.
So, John, your level services is really a 2.5, was it?
Correct.
And then to get to what you would see as a real needs is 7.8. Wasn't there one or two major drivers in that 7.8?
The personnel, isn't it?
Was it the personnel?
The
Yeah,
personnel
we
would be,
added.
another, like we said, I think $120,000, it's approximately $60,000 an employee. That does not cover the additional benefits that, with the exception of the employees that work in the water department and solid waste, those are actually compensated for in our indirect costs. But the general government portion covers. Now, we do have other opportunities too, as, an opportunity to offset some of these costs, because our mechanics work on the water system as well. They work on all the equipments related to the water department. They work on the equipment for solid waste management. So we have opportunities where if we, again, want to get creative, similar to how they fund some of the ambulance account
Oh,
funds.
so all of our equipment belongs to the water department?
pretty much.
Everyone works for the water department.
Opportunities there.
You can use the enterprise
So
fund to offset some of the increase.
Correct. There's a potential to do that. I haven't shown that in this budget, because essentially I wanted people to see the real needs, but there is opportunity there. And it would be no stretch of the imagination to say that this individual may work 25% of his time on water department related either equipment or facilities.
So one of the things I think we need to consider when we look at this and talk as a group with the department heads is that we might look at something and like the fire department said, oh, we want to add 4 people and it's this percentage. John says I need to add 2 people and it's 7 point something percent. We got to also say at the same time what it equates to from other reductions, like at the fire department, I think he said it was $98,000.
Right.
Here we're talking it's $100,000, and what do we get for that additional? Instead of always just focusing in on, oh, it's 7.8% or it's this percent, because many cases, if it's a small budget, you're going to have a large percentage for a small increase. So I just think it's something that we as a group have to be cognizant of, and really take a look at some of this, because the town has grown quite a bit. But we also have to understand what our capabilities are, and what can we afford as a community. But I've been dealing with this for a little while, so, and I'm not talking about this here, I mean in the private sector, and the whole workforce thing, and it's something we really got to look at, and how do we get our bang for our buck? I mean, if we get an extra maintenance person who can paint X, Y, Z over a period of time, he's probably gonna cover his salary in a month, compared to if we had to outsource it. And I'm just using painting because I'm looking at the yellow walls. But there are things we gotta think about and talk about. And I think it's kind of our responsibility to kind of push this, because the selectmen, everybody, they have things on their minds today. You know, I think we should be looking towards the future and understand what our long-term financial situation is.
John, do you still bring on seasonal employees?
Yes. And actually, we've been very lucky the last 2 years. We've gotten some very good seasonal help, who are, as much as we talk about there's no opportunity, there's no labor, these young kids, the ones we've gotten, have been great. I mean, give them
Is
what
your
we...
kid there? Is one of them your kids?
No.
Okay.
He knows better than to come work for me.
Oh, it's all his friends.
And you give them a weed whacker and they go. I mean, but, and not to poo-poo on that, we're gonna have a hard time retaining that, because right now, we pay $13.50 an hour. That's not even anywhere close to what people are hiring these kids to do this work now.
Minimum wage is 15.
Minimum wage is now $15, so, we're gonna have to address that.
Even with local landscape companies?
Yeah, I mean, I know,
They'll take it for 20, 25.
Right.
I know a kid who
Part-time,
worked,
yep.
I know a kid who worked all summer, doesn't even have a license, and made $19.50 an hour. They work hard.
$20 an hour now, aren't they? Weren't they
I don't know.
recruiting McDonald's at 20 an
I
hour?
saw one at $21 an hour at McDonald's.
Now, the problem with that, and again, I've only just used my 40 minutes, is we're asking for a full-time employee to come to work for the town of East Bridgewater with a hydraulics license, a CDL, commercial driver's license, experience in the trades, to start at $22 an hour.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
When that kid's making $20 an hour at Dunkin' Donuts. Now, if you can project out 42 years from when you're a 20-year-old and you can retire with a pension, that's a significant benefit of working for, a municipality still. It's honestly the most enticing benefit, because no longer are the insurance benefits that great compared to the private sector. No longer are the health and wellness benefits.
Yeah, but they can
that
take
much
their extra
different.
pay and put it in a Roth IRA.
Yep. I mean, but try to convince a 22-year-old
They're not gonna do
to
it.
do that when he sees his buddies making, $75 an hour on rate jobs. it's hard to keep those guys. One of the examples we talked about was, we had a fantastic employee, and he had worked his way up, and he was, he was the one step below foreman. He was a heavy equipment operator, and he knew that there were 5 to 7 years before he had any chance at advancing to foreman, and more than that likely. And he was maxed out at $27 an hour. He went to, it was Columbia Gas, now it's Eversource, and immediately started at $40 an hour. Unlimited overtime opportunity. He's now at, I think, he's been there a year, I think he's at like $46 an hour.
But can you drive home for lunch? So, I
No,
mean,
our
we
guys
gotta have
don't-
these little things, right?
Our guys
So-
don't actually,
To buy his lunch.
yeah, they have a lunch benefit at the gas company.
So to your point,
Pay
who
for their
does
meals.
that from a, town-wide, 10 years out?
Usually a
Well,
planner,
I think
right?
at one point in time, we were
Costs.
doing long-range budget planning and stuff like that. I think,
Right.
with all the department head changes and all the changes, I think it's time we ask about reinstituting those conversations.
Yeah, I think we need to meet with Charlie, we need to have the Board of Selectmen involved, and,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Seems to be the recurring theme, right? Lots of work, not enough workers.
right.
Well, you can barely fill like a committee, and that's, so. We need committee people too, so.
Right, no.
Another FinCom person if anyone wants.
I think, and every organization is struggling with the same thing, with civic organization, churches, employers, where have all the people gone,
Or
Yeah, it's
retired.
everywhere, even in the private sector.
Yeah, the banks, well, they can't staff, can't find tellers, so you can't go into the bank.
Yeah, branches have closed
Right.
because of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have branches that were closed.
And it's, we deal with, obviously, came up in a little different generation than the ones that, and it's a whole different mindset of management too, and the flexibility you need to offer, and the reassurance you need to continually offer to, it's just different. And it's not bad, it's just
Like
different.
mentorship programs, you could start some
I
mentorship
mean, it might
programs.
be a good idea to have somebody come in and talk about different generations and management and work style for everybody, for all the town folks. I mean, there are a couple of names, I know a few folks who have done some of this, and it might be worthwhile. It really opens your eyes up.
One of the other thing, and because it's a municipality and you don't have some of the flexibility you might have in the private sectors, we've also missed some really great opportunities. We have a number of students here in East Bridgewater that go to Mass Maritime, and we know their families, and they've approached us about, because they all have to do interns, and they have an incredible facilities management program, and they've approached us about doing internships. But we don't have budget funding, that's allocated to be able to even just pay them the $15 an hour for them to do their internship here. They'd rather do their internship here in town in East Bridgewater where they still live than have
Go
to
home
drive.
for lunch.
And go home for
Than have
lunch.
to drive into Boston.
Have their parents make them lunch
Yeah.
for, that's
And there is, I can't think of any other place where you would get as much exposure to as much different facets of facilities management as you would working for a municipality.
Is there any kind of grants or offered to get a program like that started?
Rob's actually been pretty successful working with, an organization or a
Yeah,
program.
well, that's where that elevator union person came from, the apprenticeship, basically. Brought her in, trained her, and she moved on to better places.
Was that in the budget to cover the interns
Well,
next year?
the program actually
The program
reimbursed
reimburses
us.
So she was on a
They
full
were
program.
looking for communities that were willing to let these people come to work for them, train them and this and that, and then they reimbursed us for her hours for
For 4 weeks.
4 weeks, so,
And she was so good, we had a spot and we kept her.
yeah.
Just because well, for example, I work down in Norton and Wheaton College. They give their students, they want them to do community service, and they bring them into town hall. And different departments, like political science, will come into my office, town clerk, and, they get some of their community hours out of that, and almost had one as an assistant town clerk a few years ago, because he really loved it, but he wanted to go home to Connecticut, so, but, I don't know, do they do community services at the school, at the high school at all?
The high school they do for Vikings, right, some of the, like you get Vikings points or something.
Yep, it's limited.
Yeah.
And the problem we have is we have pretty fixed hours. So 7 to 3 also tends to be when they have to go to school.
So there you go, advertise great hours, you can go home for lunch. Don't have to worry about traffic.
We actually don't.
Any other questions for John and his team on the budget for changes?
If anything does, you know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. Thanks for being flexible. Thank you.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Did you have a questions pledge that you want to show?
No, I know how these things go. So when Dan said it'll be 40 minutes, I said, it hasn't been 40 minutes in 20 years.
Don't have your mechanics make a money machine.
No, I don't want to, then we'd lose them sooner.
So my takeaway is, all the branches that fell down, bring them to the curb.
Yep.
Right?
Or the compost if it's only 4 inches in diameter.
Oh, no.
That's what I did a couple of years ago, but mine are still sitting there.
So people don't, I
Alright,
know, there's a
thanks.
fire chief here, the people don't burn their sticks out back anymore, is that not good?
That's it. I mean, people used to burn brush. People, that was a big thing. You had your brush fire on Saturday or in the winter, and
So there.
people don't do that. So that demand has increased, but there's a huge cost with that. So we accepted at the recycling center, but it's $400 an hour to have that material ground up in the mulch. It's more than that now.
Oh, really? I have like a little barrel up back, I just spin it. Put it all in the barrel and I spin it, and I use it for my garden.
When we get these, like that October storm, we brought in a massive amount of brush. And then the residents brought in a massive amount of brush. So we probably have now 5 days of grinding at more than $400 an hour.
That'd be like
I just
people who
burn
just
it.
love to grind stuff and just go do it. For volunteer, go volunteer.
There are if you can find all these volunteers, I can't find volunteers.
How do I volunteer for everything, but we can't find anyone to?
What else to do?
Right.
Yeah, right, just put it up.
All right, before we end the evening, so we were gonna take next week off, I think, but I think we probably need to meet on Monday, because we still have to get IT, Council on Aging, Conservation, and Treasurer Collector done. We'll still be waiting on schools. So I'll have Rebecca set those up for next Monday.
Would you consider Tuesday?
Oh, yeah, we can, is Tuesday okay?
Is it because we made all the lawyer comments?
Zinger.
Take a sign inventory.
Yes.
Yeah, we do that. Tuesday's fine.
Okay, let me make sure the room's available, actually, because I know they were having issues with
Double booking.
booking and everything like that. So I'll check with Rebecca and email everyone. But let's hold it in the interim.
Sounds good.
And the week after, we're not meeting, right? Valentine's Day?
Oh, I thought we said we were.
Sunday
Oh,
or
is that no?
Going to, but if we finish everything up next week, I don't know that we would
Do
need
that.
to.
Why, you don't want to, like, exchange Valentines?
Yeah,
Right after the Super Bowl.
yeah.
Right?
32 years of marriage, it gets real romantic. Sorry, honey.
Boy, still recording
TV.
here. Like, is this thing still on?
Yeah.
Zach hasn't shut it down yet, so we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
I'll make
motion
a
to
motion.
adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
DPW guys. You guys are rock.